starts cutting to length. The BR3 really blends both of those shapes. And then the BR4 and 5. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when I show you the actual diagrams and pictures of teeth. Because what we've done now, again, this is all technical stuff. We've engineered our apex. We've talked about that seat, that sort of canal with a matrix band, if you will. So our obturation is going to be very efficient now. So you can see, basically a 7 millimeter box, if you will, maybe a 9 millimeter box. So very tight fit, really efficient for the obturation system that we use. Bioceramic, single cone, hydraulic condensation, whatever you want to call it. We try not to use single cone. It has a negative connotation. So we, cold hydraulic, we can get fancy, and people are still looking for the correct terminology. But single cone obturation with gutta percha and Roth sealer, absolutely not. So we're using single cone, but we're using single cone with bioceramics that get a bond to the dentin.
But also the gutta percha you use
Is coated with bioceramic
bonds to
the sealer.
the sealer.
Right. And we sort of skirt over that at times, but again, the gutta percha we use has the bioceramic coating on it. So you're actually getting, theoretically, a three-dimensional obturation, a three-dimensional bond. So bond to dentin, the sealer is also bonding to the gutta percha. Okay? So again, a lot of people will use the sealer, but won't buy the gutta percha for some reason. I don't know why. Because it makes no sense, because you lose the bond. So
you have to buy gutta percha?
I would.
So it has to be that brand gutta percha?
Yeah, there's no, you can't get that anywhere else.
You mean it's a special gutta percha, which is like...
Right, it's coated with the bioceramic material.
Same company?
Same company, right.
You said earlier that instead of the BR3, if the canal is really curvy, instead of the BR3, you can resort to other files.
And I'll talk to you when we get more on the hands-on part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's different ways. Again, you want to think about it differently. If there's a severe curve, what do you think I should do then? I mean, you know the answer now,
Yeah.
right?
A more parallel.
Exactly. You would use less taper.
Right.
Maybe it's parallel, maybe it's an O2. So again, what we want to get across to y'all is to understand that concept. And once you understand that, you can do anything you want. Because again, this is going to change a year from now or 2 years from now. And you're going to be practicing long enough that you're going to use 3 or 4 different systems, and then you're not even going to be putting gutta percha in teeth, right? We're going to be doing more vital pulp therapy, and you've heard the whole sort of story.
So you can order like something separate.
Absolutely.
Okay. And they have all.
And I will show you a lot of that here in a second.
So apropos that, so you said 90% of the time you get to measure with BR1.
Right.
So where do you go when you don't?
Hand filing, back with hand instruments, maybe with scout files again. Again, there might be a ledge there. So there's different approaches I take. And fortunately, that doesn't happen too often. But it might be it might be back with a 15 file, really loosening it up, and then seeing what happens. But I never, if the BR1 doesn't go to length, I never force it. Again, what's the worst thing that can happen? You start forcing these.
You break?
This little tip will break every time. Every time. So again, you have to take a step back, reassess. Is there something I'm missing? Is there a little curve? We saw today, you might have had those teeth with curves coming back this way and things. You just don't know. So, but again, fortunately, 90% of the time that doesn't happen, which is good. So this is the same setup, just showing you in a tooth form. So distal canal, upper molar, BR0, right? Never goes to length, never. BR1, 1505. Yes, you could substitute, find somebody that sells a 1506. Not a problem. BR2, 2504. will go to length. The BR3 then blends everything together, coronal and apical third.
2506.
2506, right, BR3 2506. The other thing that it does for us is it allows us to go right to a BR4, which is a 35, not a 30. So we've been able to throw a file out, basically.
So is the BRT 2506 the same as a endo sequence 2506?
Yeah, you probably could use that file, yeah. And I think the design's basically the same,
And then the 3504s are the same as the 04?
yeah. I mean, they're about the same, yep. So this is when I was talking about we're building we engineering these last 5 or 7 millimeters now to get a nice tight fit for our obturation. And we can go to a BR4 or 5 in some of these, and we get a larger box, if you will. For me, it doesn't hurt to go to a size 40. I mean, if it feels the BR4 is loose, why not go to a 40? It's not going to hurt anything. For larger canals, these are available. So BR6 is a 50, so palatal canals. But remember, the 60-02, the BR7 is an 02 taper. If we go 04, it's too stiff. Also, an 04 taper and a 60 might take away too much tooth structure as well. So again, 60 tip size and 02 taper is more flexible, and it might conserve more tooth structure too. Again, very appropriate for distal canals, lower molars, palatal canals, upper molars. Very appropriate.
How many sizes do they come in lengths?
21s and 25s. 31 length files basically aren't really BioRace. They're a race file that's a 31 millimeter file. So, and they come in 2504, 3004, 3504, and 4004, basically. So that's that setup. So 21 millimeters for this, 25 millimeters for this, which usually is enough. Occasionally we get the K9 that's 27 millimeters. I never see those, but you guys might. I mean, I don't get K9s, so it's there's something wrong when I see a K9 on my schedule. Either it's 32 millimeters or the patient is sort of not yes, I like that, special. Again, I'm being filmed, so I have to be careful. So, or both, right? Again, so I don't see K9s on my schedule, but there are longer instruments. But generally, this is what the setup.
What cone would you use to fill 60?
Great question. You know, I will typically try in like a 5504 and see how that fits. I might have to use a 5004 and maybe cut it. You know, so there might have to be some adjustment. A 6004 is probably not going to fit, obviously. So there might be some adjustment that you need to do with a 55 or a 50 cone.
When you don't have a corresponding cone for each.
No, because remember the 60, the BR7's an 02 taper, and all the gutta perches an 04 taper. So a flaw in the system, right? Shoot me, right?
Wait, Doc, so what do you do when that happens?
So we might have to adjust a 55 cone or a 50 cone to fit a size 60 space that you've, right?
You have to take X-ray after you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you would have to do.
The Pro Taper system do have the corresponding cones, right? Don't
You can get corresponding cones for those,
Pro Taper.
for, you know, the F1, F2, F3, right? Right. But people like John West use non-standardized cones, and they just do it that way. So, I mean, there's different variations, and again, you know, it takes a little practice when you get into some of these weird situations. But again, as we talk about here, you know, you don't change or get, you know, excited about the 1% of the time that things happen. You know, 90% of the time, this will all fit, and you don't really have to worry about stuff like that. When we get into some of the hands-on, we can talk more about these variations, and that's fine. So again, the BR3 tells us a little information. It might not go to length, or it might, and then we can just go right to our series, no problems. But let's say it's 3 or 4 millimeters short, the BR3. So what do we do? And we all know the answer to this now. We might have to go to maybe a smaller taper. There might be a curve that's coming back out towards us we can't see. So we have to think about, why is the BR3 short? So again, we don't want to force this file. We have to take a step back and maybe make a change in how we proceed. Again, how often do I use these O2 taper files? Very infrequently. Very infrequently. And when we do hands-on, if somebody will remind me, I'll talk about a little bit of a variation on how to use these. It's a very subtle change that you can make in the system that may solve a lot of the problems. But so just remind me, somebody make a note and just, kick me in the rear end and we'll talk about it.
So those are,
BR4C is BR4 curve for curve canals, C curve canals. But again, O2, the thing I want you to get is O2 taper, more flexible. That's really the only thing you should take home from this. This is just going to be a plastic block demonstration, and we do the same thing for y'all. We start off with plastic blocks so you can see it. You want to put these things in when they're spinning. He's going to put them in just to show you how far they go first. And again, he's just tap, 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 tap. The irrigation tip won't go all the way to the apex. He hasn't made enough room for it, right? This is the step that I don't do. I sort of skip this step, and you're welcome to take a 15 file back in, absolutely. And I recommend that when you're first starting out. So he's just showing you how far the BR1 goes. 1, 2, 3, and then the stop will go at 4. And he's done. That's it. And that's a fairly, I don't know, what do we want to call it, a moderate curve? Plastic, it's plastic, but still. Look at how far the BR2 goes without doing anything. 2, 3, and then 4 will be done. Okay? I don't know. Now you can get closer with your irrigating tip, but still not quite there. So when we use a BR3 in a plastic block, this is where it can catch a little bit, but it's still, this will get around that bend pretty easily. Keep the file moving, right?
yeah, no pushing.
And very little pushing, very little. And then this will almost go to length without doing anything. And literally, this is how fast canals will go. So if you have a molar, 4 instruments times 4 taps, right? Do the math, and then each canal. And really, that's the way you think of it. So the technique of doing this is very, very straightforward. And then you just go through the irrigation protocol and things like that. And we'll take you through this. We have plastic blocks, plastic teeth. I like to take my students, I like to take our class through the plastic block first, just so we're all on the same page. They just want to show you here, we do not use any condensers or anything. They just want to show how tight this fit is. So you don't use lateral condensation or anything. So it's sort of confusing why they put that in the video. That's BioRace. Very quickly, we went through it, but it's a very simple system to use. I will guide you step by step through it. The reason I use it is it's very easy to teach, and it's very efficient and easy to use.
Do you use, after you heat it, you cut the tip of the gutter percher off?
Right?
Do you use the condenser to condense?
Yes, and just it's cold, vertically condensing right in the center of that gutta percha mass, and that's all. That's it.
So the gutta percha cones, they said it's 0.04 pascal.
Right.
And do they have a different typical sizes too, or they have just they're one size?
Yeah, but it's each, so again,
Small, medium?
no, it's all to the last file size. So there's a 3504,
Okay.
4004, but in our office here and at school, I think we don't keep anything smaller than a 30, because I always instrument to a 35. Every once in a while, if there's a curved canal, I might have to use a 30, but we don't have 25s, we don't have 20s, we don't have 15s.
So they come in this table like 35 for 4 or 4?
Right, and that's it. But I don't keep any small sizes whatsoever.
And what is that company, Dr. Bioceramics, is it the Bressler too?
Yeah,
Okay.
but there are different, like, what's the European, there's a lot of companies now that are sort of selling this stuff. You have to be real careful. They talk about being bioceramics, but are they truly bioceramics? Like MTA Angelus is another root canal filling, but what they do is they sprinkle some MTA in there, so it's not really a bioceramic. It's like Keytac silver. They thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. What did they do? They sprinkled some silver in Keytac cement. It didn't do anything magical. So you have to be careful when you're buying this stuff that it is a true bioceramic. iRoot is Canadian, maybe, European. There's different, in Europe you get different connotations of this product. So
Just one question in my head that before there is like period where the implants are covered by hydroxyapatite.
right.
Is it going to do the same? Are we going to go in the same problem with gutta percha covered with
That's, yes, you're going to, so on that side of the obturation, you're going to get that same setting reaction.
I mean, as the implant covered with hydroxyapatite, like did failure with the time because
That's a good question. We've been, the long-term studies we have of this are 5 years. It looks to be pretty prominent. We don't have really long-term studies with this stuff. 10, 15 years, we don't have long-term studies with this. So do we know the answer to that? We think we do, that it's not going to be an issue, but we don't know, truthfully. The truthful answer is we don't know yet. But it certainly at this point is better than what we've had. There's no question in my mind. We've been putting rubber in a tooth that shrinks if we heat it and cool it, and we're putting sealer that washes away. When we talk about bioceramics later on this week, we'll show you pictures of old obturations and things like that. So it's a good question, and we don't necessarily know the answers long term. We think we do, and we think we like to know the answer, but we truly don't. So a lot of questions have come up about scout files. So you saw him use a few of those yesterday. I'll go over some sizes and things like that. And again, I'm very lazy, so I like to use scout files a lot. They speed things up for me. I don't have to instrument with hand files very much. Again, it's an expense that you would add to your procedure because these are single use, no 4 or 5 uses. Very delicate instruments run at high speed, so you cannot use these please don't use them twice.
900.
These are 900 RPMs. So again, we've all seen this, especially the older guys here, right? Our bracket tables sometimes get full of files. Right? That one. So this is what you saw him use yesterday. Calcified canals, right? 1002, 1004, 1006, but they're all size 10 at the tip. I don't think he used a 1006 yesterday. But again, you can buy these separately. I buy them in one pack and I use them all. So, but again, calcified canals. Again, if I get to a 1006 to working length, I'm real happy because life is going to take 2 seconds to finish this case. Literally. Again, it's an expense though that you all have to think about. In a school setting, I pay half price. I pay $28 for a pack of these. So I get the dean, sure, go buy them. He doesn't care. As long as we're not having endo problems, he doesn't care.
If you can order only one file out of the 3, which one would you order? These are real life questions,
Well, I mean, I would probably, if I have to say, I would probably order the 1004 only because it's between the 1006 and 1002. See, I think the 1002 doesn't do enough for me, and the 1006 might do too much for me. So if I had to order one out of this, it probably is the 1004.
You only use this for calcified canals? What-
That's its recommendation, but if I have a case with a curve or something, or that I don't want to spend a lot of time hand instrumenting, so hand instrument 8, really tight, right? 10, really tight. I will go to these immediately.
What is their mechanism? How come they make it easy when it's,
Well, initially, because we asked about one file, but the 1002 is very flexible and gets around curves and things like that. And I think I'll show you how that works in some of these really curved canals in a second.
This one which like separate like this?
No. Mm-mm. No, solid core, stainless, nickel titanium, but real flexible. And we'll show you, we'll have some of these for you to work with, and you'll see how flexible it is.
I have a question. Okay, you know how like, instead of, if you did the BR3
Right?
and you can't get to working length and you don't want to go to the BR4C or the BR5C,
Right.
can you go to a scout file?
You could, but I probably wouldn't do it at that point. See, if the BR1 and 2 went to length, then I probably wouldn't think about scouts. I would think there's something wrong at that BR1 or 2 stage that I have to go back and reevaluate. And again, there's some little tricks I'll show you with really severely curved canals, because you will not be able to use them in rotary fashion on a handpiece, but you can actually put a bend in some of these files at the tip and use them by hand. So I'll show you that little trick too. So there's a couple things you have to remind me to show you. Again, so if I have a tooth that I can't get a BR1 down, I may put a little bend in the end of it. You don't run it on the handpiece, you use it by fingers, and that little bend sometimes opens things up enough for then you can use the rotary. So that's another little trick that I use. So again, please somebody remind me of that. And but I wouldn't go back to a scout file if the BR3 doesn't go.
Right, this is only when you can't get any initial.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I would use it for.
So when we can hardly insert 8 file in the
Right.
MB2,
Right.
we can go directly here.
I love doing these in MB2s, absolutely. And I think if he does a maxillary molar, you'll hear him say that. I mean, I don't think if he gets into the orifice with just a little hand file, he'll go right to these right away. Because the BR or the O2 Scout will snake around these little things and get all the way to the apex. And you'll see in the Buchanan teeth how that works with these really nicely.
If you,
Why not just use these instead of the BRs?
Well, because you don't have the tip size to finish though, right? So a 10 tip size isn't appropriate to finish. So, I mean, it's a good idea, but the tip size isn't enough.
but you know how you said that if the 8 or the 10 is real tight,
Right.
how can you go to apex with the apex locator if it's tight?
Sometimes you can. So then you might have to, we talked about early crown down today with some of you. So I might have to estimate the working length without the apex locator and sort of work my way to the apex. And again, that's getting rid of some of the debris coronally so I can get to the apex. Okay? You're exactly right. If I can't get patency, if I can't get out at the apex, my apex locator may not work.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll take a radiograph, maybe I'll estimate the length, because I don't really care. If I put a size 15 through the apex, I don't care. Mrs. Jones is going to be a little tender and sensitive, but she's not going to have severe post-op pain. So again, I use, we know, a lower premolar is going to be 21 millimeters. Okay, so that's what I'm shooting for, basically. And then I want to try to get patency. I may use these files. Even if I put this file through the apex, I don't care. I mean, I care, but it's not going to affect the outcome of the treatment at all. I mean, it's a great question. But so sometimes you have to think outside. See, I can give you black and white, but then we have to say, what if? And that's a good question. Because again, we get sort of locked. Oh my God, I can't get to the apex. What do I do? I mean, you can email me. I may not answer it right away because I may be in clinic or something, but you can email me. But again, those are the things that are important to think about. Because again, this is all technical stuff, but you have to be able to sort of think on your feet and say, okay, what am I going to do now? So the other interesting part of this, and I'm not sure that he used these yesterday, we have severely curved. So part of the Scout setup, you can get 1502 and 2002, right? So really it's a 5-file system, okay? But again, O2 taper, O2 taper. And these are just old race files, basically. I mean, again, those of us, these are pre-sequence sort of shape files, race files. But it's marketed under their Scout files. And again, we can use some of these for really curved canals now. So if I can get a 20 file around this bend, I'm pretty happy. So then I might go to the 35 no taper file to finish this one, right? So we have to think outside the box a little bit to achieve the goal that we want.
You gotta be really stocked with like all these files too.
Well, I mean, but again, these you may use once in a while. Again, I'm lazy, so I use them more than most people. Again, the BR6 and 7, you may not use that much. So again, a lot of these, the BR4C and 5C, you may not use a lot of. Again, 90% of the time, you don't need any of these things except the basic setup. And you saw some of these cases. And again, this is a micro CT, CT scan, but you can see how complicated some of these things are. So the purple was instrumented. The gold is the filling. So you had to use irrigation and things like that. So the sealer went in all these little nooks and crannies. But again, these are very complicated systems. This isn't really important. It's just more marketing than anything else. So just zip through it. Again, these are sort of micro CTs of, what canal systems look like. So this is what we face a lot of the time. We talk about teeth or, staying centered in canals for safety. We don't want that, what happens to nickel titanium when you put it in a curved canal or, it wants to straighten out basically. So again, transportation of these is very important and studies have been done. Most file systems will transport canals. It's just a question of how much. This seems to not transport canals that much compared to other systems, but it still does that. Yeah, so but again, less tapered, more flexible files are the important part of this whole thing. We're not using 08 tapers. We're not using Pro taper 07, 09. Right, an 09 taper file, right? Stiff. Who gets to an F3 anymore? Does anybody ever get to that? It better be a central incisor on a 16-year-old patient, right? And again, very consistent. You've seen the shapes that these, you've seen mostly BioRace stuff. The shapes are very much the same. You guys, if we're going to radiograph some of your stuff while you're here, your shapes, your canal treatments are all going to look the same. My students, all of 80 that do root canals, they're all going to have basic shapes, and they all look the same. Conserve coronal tooth structure, large apical sizes. Predictable, 90% of the time these things are predictable. Again, D3 dental students are starting out doing wonderful root canals with very little experience. Efficient, you can see and you're going to get an appreciation how fast these things are. Light, again, anesthetic, access, take up the bulk of my time. And again, if we're doing 4 insertions, 4 pecs, it doesn't take very long to do a root canal. And again, we like to put that up there. We don't have very much, we have the Bellion study that he showed you. We have the 150 cases that they did. Is that enough? I don't know. But it's something that we hang our hat on. Again, it's what I use, what I believe in. This is what I teach my students. And I think that's what we have for today.
You've heard about and you've tried the BioRace, and I just want to go through two other sort of systems that we use and we basically promote, and get you to try them as well. Now, as you noticed, I'm sure, when I treat the patient or when we do the blocks, we suggest that you go to a 1502 before you start to instrument with any system you use. I mean, systems we suggest or any other system. And it's not our feeling that we should do that. Actually, there are a number of studies. This is a study that was done that shows if you start your NiTi system after a glide path of 1502, your fracture rate goes down 6 times. Okay, so basically NiTi files are too flexible to find a canal. They're really there to follow a canal. Okay? But I don't know how many of you have this experience. Certainly as an endodontist, this is my daily experience, is getting down that canal and getting to a 1502 can take half an hour, can take 45 minutes. All right, so 2 things to point out here. Of course, this is a lot of wasted time. It's quite fatiguing, etc. Other thing is make absolutely sure that your files that come out of the box are sterile, because generally speaking, they're not pre-sterilized. And because they're shiny and they come out of a box, that doesn't mean they're sterile. So you should have a sponge of these 6, 8, 10, 15 files that are pre-sterilized, because generally what happens is you've got 3 or 4 sterilized, and then you get, like curved and broken, etc. And then, oh, give me another box, and it's nice and shiny, and you think it's sterile. But if you had to go to a factory that makes files, you'd realize very clearly that they're not sterilized. They're shiny, but they're not sterile. So that's just point number 1. So in many cases, if I can get a 6 down, I have struggled, for 20 minutes to get the 6 down. I don't want to spend another 20 minutes getting to a 15, which is going to be my start. So there are files which are basic race files with a slightly different tip, which can help you get down. And I need them almost every day. I actually used them on my patient that I demonstrated on. You may not have picked it up because it was the first day, etc. I'll use them again today. But these can do the job. If you're down to a 6, I can get you to a 1502 in 10 seconds with these files. Sometimes even if you can't get down with a 6, this file will get you down. But I'd like to get to a 6, right? So sometimes when I'm just about, if I didn't have these files available and I'm just about to give up, I say, I'm going to use these files. What's the worst that can happen? They'll break, right? I'm not getting down anyway. And I would say, from a clinical perspective, non-scientific, 7 out of 10 times they get me down. So these are very, very good. Again, you can't use them more than once. Relatively speaking, they're extremely expensive. So I would use them only for special cases, but be careful, they're addictive. So it's like your cell phone that you used to, when you originally bought it 15 years ago, it was for emergencies only. And now I notice the audience, everyone's checking their cell phone, and your data, which was very expensive, was going to be used very carefully, Now everyone uses their data and runs out of data by the 15th of the month, et cetera, et cetera. So these are sort of the same, have the same addictive quality.
How much are they?
I don't know. You'd have to find out. Two types. The basic one is a 1002. Right, so that's your 10 file on a handpiece. Now remember what we talked about, cyclic fatigue, torsional fatigue. If you're going to use these files and you're not prepared to go at 900 RPM, please don't use them because they're going to break. And what it means is this file, you can wave it in the air and it's so flexible, it'll wave. But, so that means cyclic fatigue is not really a major factor, but of course it's a very fragile file, so if the tip catches, it breaks. So you need to go at a high speed to make sure that that tip does not catch. Okay, so 800, 900, when you start to get to the bigger ones, you can decrease the speed because they're not as fragile. But I never tell people, use file 1 at 900, use file 2 at 600, use file 3 at 450, because no one's going to change it. So if you're going to have to choose speed. And just, the rules that we talked about last time, don't leave the file in one place and keep it moving, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So this is a set of files that changes tip size, but the taper stays 02. So these files are very, very good for extremely curved canals, right? Because the taper maintains the flexibility.